Hey. So I've seen a couple of comments asking me to finish this book, and I swear I've been meaning to. But work has been kind of crazy. So we're going to do it now that I feel like doing it, because although I am tired, I really want to finish this book. We are 3 chapters from finishing it, and then we'll decide if we want to go to the next book or if we want to do the next Turtle series. But we'll get to that. I have seen your comments, and I am so happy to see that people actually listen to my channel, because I was in fact under the impression that I was speaking into the void. So it's good to see. It makes me feel good, knowing that people actually like my channel and listen, because it was getting real dark in there, for a little bit. If you hear a fan, I'm not apologizing, because it's been very humid here in Kentucky, and I hate being sweaty. Alright, let's get going, boys, girls, and squirrels. Make sure that you are staying hydrated. Bring up whatever doodad that you're working with, or if you listen to me while you're on your commute or while you're at work. Welcome. I'm happy you're here. Leave a comment. Like my video. It helps with the, supposed algorithm. Share me with anybody that you want to. Comment down below if you want me to read the next Circle of Magic book, or if you would rather I move on to the next Turtle series, which I believe is Dane. Yeah, it's Dane. Alright, we are on Circle of Magic, Sandry's book, chapter 11 of our series. This is going to be a very, very long video. I'm going to record, so if it sounds a little bit broken up, it's because I'm recording one chapter at night and then the other 2 chapters the next day. Because it is 3 chapters, it is going to be very long. This is going to be probably the longest video I've done in a long time. But it's because it's an odd number of chapters. So, because of that, and I was doing 2 at a time, because of that, it's got to be this way. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 11. The next day, Discipline's residents grumpily returned to their schedule. All of the humans felt the lack of sleep and the overexcitement from the day before. Only Little Bear, making himself at home and learning that certain important dog acts were not to be done inside Discipline, was lively that morning. For Deja, the hours until afternoon crawled. She rushed through the dishes, even helping Briar to dry them in her hurry. When Sandry asked Nico why Lark and Rosethorn once again walked a thread and herb circle around the cottage, Deja thought she would scream with frustration. She just wanted to get meditation over with. She fidgeted as Nico explained that the circles were only needed until the 4 mastered the mind gathering in exercise. Once they were able to keep their undisciplined power from spilling over all over Winding Circle, there would be no more need for magic to contain them as they meditated. Triss gasped. You mean discipline? This house doesn't mean punishment? Well, it can be taken as punishment, said Nico with an eye on the restless Deja. But more importantly, discipline is what you're here to learn. That, Deja heard. Sorry, she mumbled, dark cheeks going red with shame. She did try harder to calm down after that. Finally, the hub clock sounded the end of the rest period. Deja nearly flew down the road to the smithies. Breathless and drawn by the music of hammering, she walked into Frostpine's iron forge. Kyril, at work shaping a red-hot strip of metal, nodded. Frostpine waved the girl over to where he lounged against the long counter. I understand you had a lively day at the market, he remarked, with a smile. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, panting. You knew I have magic? He smoothed his beard with a broad hand. Learning to work with metal is more important, he said flatly. When Deja blinked at him, not understanding, the smith began to pace. This odd power that I have, that you have, it's not like that of university mages. They draw a design on the ground, mumble a few words, and get results. Not us. Our magic only works as well as the things it passes through. If you can't bring a forged fire to white heat with a bellows, or work an iron bar so that it won't break on impact, or melt down ores without removing the dross, he shrugged. The magic is only as strong as your fire or metal. It's only as pure as the ore you melt down. Before you become a mage, you must be a smith. You must work metal and magic together. He stopped and blinked. I made a speech, didn't I? For a moment, she didn't understand what he'd said last. His words had sounded a note so deep inside Deja that her bones still rang with it. Frostpine cupped her face in his hands. Deja? She took a deep breath. I want to learn. I want to learn everything. He smiled at her. I knew that. Releasing her, he pointed at the counter. On it was placed a line of cloth-covered lumps. Come, tell me what these are. When she reached for a cloth, he stopped her. Before you look. You mean with magic? Use anything except sight. These are common metals, ones you've seen and handled in some form. It should be easy. He drew his hand away. Deja stepped up to the counter. What was she supposed to do? Nervously, one eye on Frostpine in case he objected, she put her left hand on the first lump and took a deep breath. Then another, then a third. Did it have a smell? Bending, she sniffed the air over the cloth. The scent was barely present, an acid sharpness. Carefully, she rubbed her fingers over the lump and inhaled that tang again. What was that country in the southwest? They had dropped anchor for two scant days, before her mother decided that there were too many warring tribes for safe trading. She couldn't remember the name, but she had helped She had helped to log the copper jewelry they got in those 2 days. Copper? She asked Frostpine. That doesn't sound like you're sure. It had been her first landfall with the ship, and the jewelry was beautiful. Her mother had worn a brooch from that cargo until the ship went down. I'm sure, she told him. Frostpine lifted off the cloth. Very good, he said as Deja touched the blobby piece of raw copper. Next, he pointed to the second lump. She touched it and knew right away, though she couldn't say how. Gold. He uncovered 3 small nuggets. Not surprising after you drew gold wire. Deja picked the nuggets up. They almost sang against her fingers, as if she clutched sunlight. Smiling, she put them down. Frostpine pointed to the next lump. And? She smelled the air over it. She pressed her fingers all over the cloth. She knew it, but not by itself. I give up, she said at last. It makes me crazy, because I ought to know, and I don't. Perhaps you're getting tired, suggested Frostpine. Try that one. If it doesn't work, you can rest. She placed a limp hand on the cloth, feeling like a dolt. She ought to know what each and everything he showed her was. She ought to. Forcing those thoughts from her mind, she concentrated on the thing under her hand. It was worked metal, she knew that from the shape, smooth and slightly curved. Her fingers detected bumps that formed a design. Of course she knew it. She handled and stowed that plenty of bronze aboard ship. It was marvelous stuff. This bit in particular seemed to hang, glowing in her mind. Absorbed, she closed her eyes, exploring it with her thoughts. Part of bronze was copper. Not only had she learned that years ago, but now she felt the copper in the piece. Moreover, the rest, that part which wasn't copper, was tin. In trading classes, she'd learned that bronze was a mix of copper and tin. She felt tin recently. Deja jerked the cloth off the metal she couldn't identify before. A small pile of heavy black lumps met her eyes. "It's tin!" she told Frostpine gleefully. "Because it's copper and tin that makes bronze." Frostpine grinned. "Deja, we are going to have fun together," he promised. "Can I play too?" asked a forlorn voice. Unnoticed by them, Kirill had finished the piece he worked on and had come over to watch. He smiled ruefully at his master and at Deja. "I'll be good." That evening, after supper and baths, the residents of Discipline made themselves comfortable in the main room. Little Bear, his belly round with the meal of scraps that he had gulped, sprawled on the floor and slept, paws twitching as he dreamed. Bringing her new spindle and rolags she had prepared that afternoon, Sandry took a chair beside Lark, who did her own spinning while helping the girl with hers. Briar had 4 plants that he had yanked from the ground by mistake, thinking they were weeds. Rosethorn ordered him to memorize them by sight and scent, and never pluck them again. She herself sat at a table, writing in a ledger. Nico was next to her, writing letters. Like Briar, Deja had memorizing to do. Frostpine had given her drawings of several types of hammer, each with a written description of its use, to learn within the week. Triss had a library book, one that described the early lives of 5 great mages. For a while, the only indoor sounds were the scratch of pens, the rustle of paper, and Sandry's mutterings when the thread unwound or a rolag came apart. More noises drifted through the doors and windows. The soft chime as the hub clock sounded every 15 minutes or its deeper tones as it called the hour. The muted laughter and clatter of people as people went by on the spiral road. The night songs of crickets and peepers. With nearly 3 feet of freshly spun thread, lumpy, too thick in some places and too thin in others, wound on her spindle, Sandry took a break. Rolling her head on her neck, as she often saw Lark do, she got up and walked around. Returning from a look outside, she discovered that Briar was toying with something, with some stray pieces of wood. He twisted it in his fingers. "What are you doing?" she asked as he added another tuft of wool to his string. "Your magic's with plants." If he didn't hold down the piece he'd already twirled, it did not just unwind, it sprang apart. When he reached for the tufts he collected from her earlier mistakes, they puffed into balls or blew out of his fingers. That, spinning looks interesting," he replied, grabbing more bits of wool. "Relaxin' like." Rosethorn looked up from her ledger. "Learning to spin isn't a bad idea," she commented thoughtfully. "We need a lot of string for our work. Forget wool and silk, though. Those are from sheep or little worms. People like us do better off with cotton and flax." Rosethorn grinned. "They come from plants." "Sandry, will you teach me?" asked the boy, still trying to get his tufts under control. "If I can find this other stuff to spin." "I'm only learning myself," she pointed out, "and not very well." "I'll teach you." Lark wound almost a yard of thin, fine thread onto her spindle. "Sandry's coming along nicely." "I am?" asked the girl, eyes bright. "You're learning to control magic and thread. And very well. Briar, you should learn straight spinning, no magic involved. And I should warn you, cotton and flax are harder to work with than wool." "Will you teach me the spell you used on my water spout?" asked Triss. It wasn't a spell, replied Lark. I had no time to think of one. Then how'd you do it? Triss demanded, puzzled. Lark glanced at Nico, who put down his pen. Like yesterday, he said carefully, picking his words. We see times when a mage doesn't know or doesn't have time to think up the right spell. When that happens, open your mind. Think of the objects and processes that you're comfortable with. That might be a spindle, waves, blows on an anvil, and the growth of trees. Lark undid a water spout. She had no spell for it, but she let her magic speak through her, and it worked. Triss shivered. It's that simple? Magic's that simple? His thick black eyebrows snapped together in a frown. Magic is never simple, Tristana. Working in this way has its dangers. It's crude and sloppy. It burns up power faster than the magic that you take time with and use with control. It didn't hurt Lark, Briar objected. Did it? He asked her. Lark smiled. You learn better ways to handle it as you study. I don't want you trying experiments with it, Nico said forbiddingly. Magic is not your toy. I tell you that only because you might end up in a situation where you were forced to act fast. He returned to his letter. After a moment, when it was clear that he was done talking, Triss asked Lark, Would you teach me spinning anyway, just in case? If you want to learn, I'll teach you, replied Lark. Deja, are you interested? If it doesn't get into my time with Frostpine. I wouldn't dream of taking you from him. Lark stared into the distance thoughtfully. This time of day would be good for lessons, I think, and once you get the hang of it, the work is soothing. I give up, Briar announced with a sigh, putting his wool aside. I hope I do better with plants for spinning. Having a spindle helps. Sandry crouched beside him, peering at a patch of wool on his shirt front. Pinching her fingers together, she pulled her hand toward her. Come on, she ordered the wool. Don't make me get stern with you. Hey, that tickles, Briar cried as the fibers on his shirt wriggled. You can't feel the wool, she retorted. I can feel what you're doing to it, and it tickles. Hold still, she ordered. Again, she pinched her fingers together and drew them together, toward her. The loose fibers slowly pulled themselves together into a bunch. The girl frowned. She almost had it. How had it worked the other day? The feeling had been a familiar one. Searching her memory, she had it. When her power did what she asked, she felt the same as if she had set a hard embroidery stitch, or her needle had darted through the cloth to lock it down perfectly. Taking a breath, she found that same feeling inside. Pinched and pulled. The wool drifted over the gap between her and Briar and landed on the hand that she had beckoned with. Sandry looked at it and beamed. Good, said Briar. He didn't realize that she had just done her first piece of deliberate magic. Now can you get this bit on my britches? After that, their lives took on a pattern. Meditation, taught by Nico, came after morning chores. Sometimes they worked in the cottage, but he also took them to the wall around Winding Circle, to the cave in the cliff, even to the garrets on the loom houses, where the beat of the working looms drummed through the timbers. Individual lessons filled the afternoons. In the evenings, the four read, studied, or worked at spinning. Lark was always present for that. At least one of the other teachers would come to spin their own projects. Frostpine spun wire from silver, gold, or copper threads, or tell stories, or teach something new. Those lessons weren't always magical. As the willow moon waned, Lark taught them all, even Triss, how to do handstands. In the month of the hawthorn moon, Rosethorn showed them how to make a lotion to prevent sunburn. By then, the children needed it. Midsummer was on its way. By the end of Willow Moon, the weather turned hot. and most adults preferred to stay indoors and nap after midday. They weren't fighting, and fights often came up between Tris, Briar, and Deja. There it is. The four lazed on their home's thatched roof, wearing broad-brimmed hats and sunburn ointment. Little Bear, denied the chance to follow them onto the thatch, waited below, looking mournful and abandoned. Their teachers worked them hard. Rosethorn guided Briar in what he felt was an endless round of weeding. "It's early summer," she said as he complained. "Of course it's weeding." As they worked, she told him what each plant, whether it was a flower, weed, fruit, or vegetable, how he could recognize it, and what uses it had in medicine, cookery, and magic, if any. He was expected to memorize it all for those times when, out of nowhere, she would ask him to find a certain plant and tell her about it. "I wake in the night muttering stuff like fennel," he complained one day on the roof. "Now in the vegetable garden, most vegetables hate it, as a tea is given babies to relieve colic." "What's colic, please?" The girls stared at him. "It's a thing babies get," Deja said at last. Briar made a face at her. "Where was I? Good for wrinkles, indigestion. Helps to move the bowels. Also helps mothers produce more breast milk." "Breast milk?" repeated Sandry, blue eyes wide. "That's what she said. Then there's grown around the home. Fennel gives magical protection. Hung in the windows and doors. It wards off evil spirits." "How can you be expected to remember all that?" Tris wanted to know. "He just did," Deja murmured, watching little clouds grow into big ones. "It's Rosethorn," Briar replied. "Believe me, if she told you to remember something, you'd remember it, or she'd want to know why." No one argued with this. Weeks of acquaintance with the tart-tongued dedicate had filled them all with solid respect. "What about you, Trangashi?" the boy asked Deja, tickling the back of Sandry's neck with a straw. When Sandry turned to look at him, the straw was in his mouth, and he was staring at the sky. "What's that Frostpine teaching you?" "What does that mean?" Tris asked. No one ever said that. The others speak traitor talk. Why can't you?" growled Deja. "It's Trangashi. All right, it means forbidden," offered Sandry. "Bad luck," Briar said at the same time. Tris eyed Deja. "What could you do at your age to be called that?" For a moment, she thought the traitor might refuse. At last, in a few short sentences, Deja told her about the lost first of her ship, and then of her people. When she finished, Tris shook her head. For the first time, she felt sympathy for Deja. "Maybe she doesn't like to hear that name, Briar," Sandry commented tartly, banging the boy's ankle with her fist. Deja flapped a hand. "I don't mind," she said lazily. "Not from him." "Because what a cat says means nothing, right?" Briar asked. When Sandry looked away, he tickled the back of her neck again. She whirled and glared at him. "That's right," Deja said agreeably. "So what does Frostpine teach you?" demanded Briar. Deja sighed. "Lately, he teaches me about coal. Coal's very important to a smith. He wants me to know how it's mined. Why does a smith have to know mining? I asked him, and he says, 'You tell me.' At least I finally learned what all the basic tools are for. Now he's teaching me how to make them. All of them. And put my magic into them." "How goes it?" Briar wanted to know. "Don't ask," Deja replied glum. She looked at Tris. "What are your lessons?" Tris sighed. "I learn the names of the stars and the words for different kinds of clouds and keep a record of the tides. Weather stuff. Sky stuff. Tides aren't weather, Briar said. In the sea they are, replied Triss. They're like winds, only in the water. Scratching her shoulder, Sandry turned away from the boy. In a flash, he leaned toward and brushed her neck with the straw. The scratching hand lifted. Sandry pinched her fingers together and tugged. The straw leapt from Briar's hold and went to her. She turned, blue eyes, businesslike, and flapped the hand that held the straw. The bit of grass flew at Briar's face. He shrieked and covered his eyes with his arms. Undaunted, the straw hopped from his nose to his ears, tickling him mercilessly. Forgetting where he was, Briar tried to scoot away. Before he reached the roof's edge, Sandry dropped the straw and grabbed one of his arms. Deja seized the other one. "Now stop it," Sandry ordered when the boy was settled again. "Did you know you could do that?" asked Briar, gray-green eyes shining with admiration. "Yours is with thread, you told us." "Well, you can weave straw, kind of. I'll see if I can unravel the string on your breeches if you don't leave me alone." The clock chimed the hour, making the air shiver. With groans, the four got up and headed back into the cottage. Midsummer's Day approached, and Winding Circle prepared for the holiday. The children helped to lay bonfires at the gates and were kidnapped by the Earth Temple's chief dedicate to help scrub the temple floors. Wonderful smells lay in banks around the hub, as Dedicate Gorse and his cooks prepared a feast, and in lesser billows near the smaller kitchens scattered throughout the temple community. Those odors had more power over Briar than even his lessons. He was late to the garden every day for a week, often arriving with stains on his shirt or smears around his mouth to betray where he'd been. 2 days before the solstice, Rosethorn tracked him to the hub itself. Gripping one of his ears, she marched him away from Gorse's lair. "But there was this tremendous smell," he protested. "Like the spices you want me to memorize. I knew if I saw them being used, I'd learn them better. I was doing it for you." Ow! She had given his ear an extra twist. "No humbuggery from you, my lad," she replied as she pulled him along. "Green man, rap us. You'd think we never fed you. You do. It just..." She turned him to face her and gripped his shoulders. "I don't know what's to become of you," she informed him, brown eyes fixed on his. "You may grow to be a true earth mage. Maybe you'll join a temple. You might be the most sought-after gardener north of the Pebbled Sea. That's up to you. One thing is certain. Hunger is a thing of the past. You may skip a meal or two, but you'll never starve. Take my word for that, and don't make me come after you again." Suddenly, he wrapped his arms around her, squeezed and let go, then set off toward discipline. Rosethorn, her cheeks red, followed him. The day before midsummer, Triss woke near dawn, full of restless energy. Since the day Nico had brought it up, she had wanted to try something. It was an itch that grew as she studied tides and winds, until it was more than she could stand. With their stretch of coast recently cleared of pirates in preparation for the holiday going on, the watch on the temple gates would not be as sharp as usual. She could experiment now, before her housemates rose. Dressing hurriedly, she slipped downstairs. Little Bear came out of Sandry's room as she passed and whined. Outside, she turned the latch on the gate behind her, and the pup was there. "If you come, be quiet," she ordered in a whisper. Silently, the dog followed. A few people were opening shutters and doors, but the spiral road was empty. The guards at the south gate had opened it for a wagon driven by a sleepy-looking novice. While they talked, Triss and Little Bear slipped through the open gate and across the road. They climbed down the trail, past the meditation cave, until they got to the beach. The rock shelves on both sides of the cove were bare of water, showing seaweed, mussel beds, and tide pools. Now at its lowest point, the tide had begun to turn. By noon, all but the tiniest sliver of beach would be covered in seawater. "Let's see how good I am," the girl told Little Bear, sitting on a rock at the foot of the trail. The pup sat down as well and yawned. Okay. Closing her eyes, Triss started her meditation breathing, listening for the voice of her magic. In the weeks since beginning her studies, she had learned how to take strength from currents in the air or sea, if she were tired. She thought she could use that same magic to keep the tide from coming in, by pulling its strength into herself or through herself at least. The rock she chose as a seat looked like a good place to store the rest of it until she chose to set that power free. As a wave came in, she called to its strength, taking it in. Without letting it go, she reached for the power of the next wave, and the next, draining the tide of its force as it tried to cover the shore. With her eyes closed, she couldn't see that the water now lurked around the far ends of the rock shelves, bubbling and churning like a pot on the boil. She grasped as much power as she could stand. To her surprise, she couldn't hold nearly as much of it as she had expected to. Like a sailor trying to empty out a sinking boat, she hurried to dump the strength from other waves into the rock beneath her. The sea fought hard, surging and pulling on her magic, trying to shake her loose. Just a little longer, she thought, just a bit more, so I know I really did it. When Triss opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was Nico's face. "Uh-oh," she whispered and closed them again. "Now you know why only 1 in 10 trader wind mages lives to adulthood," that clipped voice said. She tried to sit up. The rock under her felt strange, hardly like stone at all. For one thing, she'd had to crawl onto it. Now she could just step off, once she had the strength. For another, it gave, more like a sack of grain than a proper boulder. When she tried to lever herself off the stone with both hands, it collapsed, dropping her amid a shower of gravel, shattering into 1,000 small pieces. Triss rolled onto her back, staring up at Nico. Little Bear came over and licked her face. "What happened to my rock?" she demanded lazily. "It's all to pieces." "It's where you placed what you took from the tides, isn't it?" She nodded. "You put in more than the stone could hold. It's dissolving. Now let me ask. Have you had a lesson today?" inquired the mage. "You look very tall from down here," Triss remarked. His eyebrows came together in a scowl. Hurriedly, she said, "When my teacher tells me it's a bad idea to try and fight the power of nature, I should listen." He grasped her hands. I don't know that I can walk," she admitted, as Nico helped her to rise. "I know very well that you can't," he said. "Your luck is in. The moment I knew you were in trouble, I enlisted a friend." "Hello," Kirill said. Triss hadn't seen him waiting on the path. "You must be Deja's friend, the crotchety one." Grinning, he knelt, folded her over his shoulder, and stood. "This is so humiliating," grumbled Triss. She was too weak to even struggle. "Let's go," Nico said. Little Bear, yapping with pleasure, danced around them as they began the long climb home. Winding Circle kept the midsummer holiday in style, with a feast, music, and dancing and rituals. One and all thanked the sun for its gifts on the longest day of the year, and prayed for a good harvest. Freed for the holiday, Briar, Sandry, and Deja wandered through the Winding Circle, listening to music, and ate until even Briar could not manage another bite of meat or cake. Triss remained a discipline. Her experiment with tides had left her weaker than an overboiled noodle. She slept in a chair. When she lay flat and closed her eyes, the tide dragged at her bones, trying to pull her out to sea or dash her against rocks. Little Bear kept her company all day. Now and then someone would look in, the other children or one of the dedicates. Nico came by and gave her a book called Daring the Wheel, Those Who Defied Nature's Magic. Reading it was a sobering experience for Triss. She had gotten off lightly. She was still alive. As the longest day of the year drew slowly down to night, her stomach began to roll. Her pulse thumped in her ears, her feet and hands tingled. She fought to stand, trying to get a body no stronger than soup to carry her through a door a few feet away. Little Bear whimpered and encircled her, barking as she gave up on standing and crawled. She had reached the outside doorstep when the ground shuddered and flexed. Little Bear raced to the outdoor shelf that held Briar's shotgun, barking madly. The tremor had made it slide forward. Gulping against the need to vomit, Triss realized that yet another shake was on its way. There was no time to think. She scrambled for the shelf as the shotgun leapt toward her. Thrown off its support by the new tremor, with a yelp, Triss caught it and held it steady. Little Bear whined and tried to crawl into her lap underneath it. Briar was the first to reach discipline, at a run. Rosethorn was not far behind him. When they came through the gate, they stopped to stare. Triss leaned against the cottage, asleep. The shotgun was in her lap. Little Bear was draped over her shins. The new shelf on Briar's window hung only by one strut. The other had broken in the second tremor. Triss woke as Briar lifted his treasure out of her lap. Guessing what caused his scowl, she said, Don't thank me. You'll just scare me worse than I've been already." Instead, he reached her free hand down to her. "Come on, old lady," he said. "Time to hobble inside." Rosethorn took the girl's other hand between them. They helped Triss into the house. That was chapter 11. We'll start chapter 12 tomorrow. Anyway, have a good night. Okay, bye. Alright, guys. We are on chapter 12 of our book, Circle of Magic, Sandra's book, Tamara Pierce, blah, blah, blah. We went over this yesterday. So let us continue. This is going to be the final couple of chapters. So let's go. By the way, like, comment, subscribe, and stay hydrated, baby. Nico had just started the next day's meditation when someone knocked briskly on Discipline's front door. He frowned and went to answer it himself. "I'm sorry, Master Nico." The novice was gasping for breath. "They want you at the hub now." "I'm teaching. Honored Moonstream said it can't wait." "I'll take them, Nico," called Lark from her workroom. Nico hesitated, then followed the novice out of the cottage. He was absent the rest of the day. Triss, waiting for her afternoon's lessons, gave up and continued to read, Daring the Wheel. The residents of Discipline had just settled down to the night's spinning when Nico returned. "Lark, Rosethorn, if I may have a word," he said with a nod to the children. They went outside and talked so quietly that none of the four could eavesdrop, although they tried. At last the adults came back into the cottage, looking troubled. Come with me, Briar," Rosethorn ordered. The boy carefully put down his spinning and followed her to the workroom. Nico gave another book to Triss. "Something's come up, and I'm needed at the hub for a while. Study this. It's about weather patterns in Emlyn and her neighbors, and how one kind of weather may spark another. Meditate daily, record the tides and the moon's phases as I requested, and do whatever Lark and Rosethorn say. I'll look in on you as I can." "Nico, what's going on?" inquired Sandry. "I don't know yet," he replied. "That's the problem. There's a tremendous amount of activity in the seeing and hearing places of the hub. Omens and portents that are being reported from everywhere around the Pebbled Sea. We must sort through all that is being foretold and try to put together the alternatives we are being shown. "I don't understand," complained Deja, winding newly spun thread onto her spindle. With a sigh, Nico sat on a chair. When seers view the future, it isn't a lone, solid image. The various choices that people make change any one future into many. Each choice in those futures gives birth to still more. Omens and visions or pictures from all of those futures. Our task is to find the single event or events that started them. Once we find it, we can learn where and when that event takes place and try to prepare. That sounds like work if you ask me, Deja said firmly. Nico smiled. It is. Rosethorn and Briar returned, the boy carrying a basket full of packets of herbs and bottles of liquid that Rosethorn had just measured out of her supplies. I labeled everything, Rosethorn explained. If they need more, tell them to send to me. Her mouth twisted wryly, and she added, Perhaps mention that Crane's keep-awake tea is a hair better than mine. Everyone stared at her. But just a hair, she said crossly, and don't tell Crane I said it. I wouldn't dream of it, Nico reassured her, taking the basket. Dedicates, thank you. Children, I hope to see you all soon. Milla bless, Lark said gently. May the knot come undone and the threads be laid out straight for you to see. Sandry blinked as Lark spoke. The girl saw golden strands of power drift through the air and twine gently around the mage. The other three sensed the magic's passing and shivered. Nico bowed and left. The dedicates and the children drew the god's circle on their chests and returned to their work. Over the next 2 weeks, whenever any of them saw Nico, his thick, black eyebrows were knit in a thoughtful frown. He gave Triss more books and scrolls to work from. For several days he turned her over to Frostpine, who taught her and Deja the properties of metals. Nico rarely visited the cottage for meals. Briar was left to bathe on his own most nights. Even when Nico came to eat or teach, he was easily distracted. Standing on the temple's northern wall with the others one hot afternoon, Deja saw a cloud billow from the windows of the hub. Is that? She asked Briar. The bird coat, he replied. It surely is. The cloud of messenger birds broke up and spread, heading in all directions. Less than half an hour later, mounted couriers galloped out of Winding Circle. Something big, Triss remarked. Maybe somebody'll tell us what's going on, grumbled Briar. That would be nice. 2 nights later, Nico joined them for supper. He looked worn out. His eyes were puffy and bloodshot. The lines that framed his nose and mouth were deeper than usual. I think we've done all we can, he announced. They got the word in time, certainly, and the message has gone to the coast cities and to the islands. Now all we can do is wait. What message? Asked Sandry. You're going to tell us what's up? Briar wanted to know. The man nodded. Regat will have an earthquake tomorrow. Sometime before noon. Word's been sent to Regat and her neighbor Pajun to prepare, and everyone on the surrounding coast who might be hit by a tidal wave. A quake? Are we in danger? Asked Triss nervously. None. If there's a wave, the east shore of the East Emlyn Peninsula will take the brunt of it, not our side, Nico told her. Regat is too far from us to feel the quake itself. His fingers tapped restlessly on the table. Something bothers you still? Lark wanted to know. You can only alert people. It's not as if you can actually stop an earthquake. Why shouldn't they stop an earthquake? Sandry asked when Nico didn't answer right away. Triss turned suddenly pale for a moment. She felt the power of the tides squeeze her. Don't even think of such a thing. It's a question of the power of the quake, Rosethorn pointed out. It builds up over years. That power must go somewhere. You can't make it vanish. But there's been little shakes all summer, protested Briar. Didn't that bleed some of it off? No. They just made it stronger because they weren't in the spot where this quake is growing. Am I right? Triss asked Nico. He nodded and moved food around on his plate. I don't like the messages from Wave Circle Temple in Regad, he said at last. Who's in charge there? Asked Lark. Honored Huath, Nico replied. Lark whistled softly. Huath. Him and his machines, the ones that turn one kind of magic into another. What was the last one? Oh, yes. A mill that was supposed to turn wind magic into lightning magic. How could I forget? Did Huath say anything? Asked Rosethorn. His message to Moonstream was, You may be surprised, Nico told her. I don't like the sound of that. There's nothing you can do now, Rosethorn pointed out. You look like you should be in bed. Even Huath isn't so prideful as to fiddle with an earthquake, Lark added, but the four heard uncertainty in her voice. Nico sighed. Triss, be patient for 2 or 3 more days. I've been leaving you on your own, and I know you need training badly. I am sorry, but a problem like this would take the sap from a far younger tree than I am. Is he allowed to talk? Is he allowed to talk like you do? Briar asked Rosethorn. About being a tree? Nico smiled. Forgive me, Triss. I'll make it up to you. I'm sorry. I keep messing with the volume on this thing on accident. So if my voice volume keeps going up and down, that's why I keep fiddling with it. And I'm sorry. Where was I? He levered himself to his feet and left the cottage. Why is he so tired? Asked Sandry. He's been far-seeing in crystal, scrying for the future. It drains him, Lark explained. We're lucky he was here to assist our own seers in sorting out the different omens. She got to her feet. Who's got dishes? Was she dreaming? It looked so real in places. A woman, a maidservant by her clothes, sat on the checkered tile floor, drinking from a heavy crystal decanter. The white sores on her face, arms, and legs oozed. She couldn't open one eye at all. Have a drink with me, your ladyship, she said with a sly grin. Drink to the Lord Death, as has us all. No, thank you, she whispered. Dodging the woman, she ran out, as a drunken laughter followed her. Her parents were here, in this palace, whose empty corridors twisted and turned. Her mother, her father, Parisi. She had to find them. It was time to go. She had never liked palaces. They were cold places. Boxes of marble, crystal, metal, and porcelain, with no place where a person could sit and be comfortable. Once she found her people, they could leave. She stumbled around a corner and suddenly in her parents' bedroom. Here they were, still abed as usual, arms wrapped around each other as usual. Now they would sit up and laugh and beckon for her to come to them. But they did not. She went to where they rested on the pillows and shook her father's shoulder. He slipped down. She saw his face. The pockmarks, dry and clotted, the white matter gone brown. Suddenly, the reek of old death billowed over her. The smell of rotten meat. Her mother slid with him, locked to his chest, as dead as he was. Parisi lay across the foot of their bed, her face battered by her murderer's attack. Her scarlet dress, mourning for her 3 children who died 2 days before, was unmarked. A door slammed. She looked around frantic. The candles and lamps in the room went out. She was alone, in the dark, with the dead. Sandry gasped and sat up. The first thing she saw were Discipline's white stone walls and her embroidered tree of life hanging. It was almost dawn. There was plenty of light in the room, just as well, because her small bedside lamp was out. She frowned at it. Had the nightmare come because her light was gone? Perhaps she ought to ask Lark for a bigger lamp, if this one could run out of oil in one night. Remember to stay hydrated, people. Okay. Shaking, she got out of bed. The dream was always the same. Her parents looked just as they had when she found them. In reality, Parisi had been alive, had been trying to stop her from entering their bedroom. In reality, they had heard the roar of the mob, and Parisi had insisted on hiding her. Pouring cold water into her basin, she scrubbed the fear sweat off of her face. Cleaning her teeth with hands that still trembled, Sandry vowed to ask Lark for a bigger lamp. She just had to stay out of the dark. That was all. Everyone woke to a hazy sky and odd orange-colored light. The air was hot, damp, and close. Little Bear ran from the front door to the back, whining. Tris had a headache and a queasy stomach. Rosethorn and Briar were edgy. Deja, who liked to go barefoot when she could, put her shoes on. She was fine upstairs, but the ground seemed hot. No one did well as they meditated that morning. They were all too restless. "You'd better take a holiday, Briar," Rosethorn said at midday. "I'm going to lie down." Ashen, she went into her room and closed the door. "I'll clean up," Lark said. She, too, looked unwell. "I need something to do. Go play, and take the bear with you. He's annoying me." Sandry hung her work bag off of one shoulder and caught the pup. She needed both arms to hold him. He was not easy to carry as he was 5 weeks before, when they brought him back from the city. "Tris, maybe you should lie down," she suggested. "She's right," Deja said. "You look like old cheese." "Thanks, ever so," Tris retorted, her voice dry. "Let's walk outside the wall if we can." "Let's," said Briar. "It's not like we'll get that earthquake or tidal wave. Nico said we wouldn't." Outside the gardens, Sandry let the pup go. He led the way through the south gate, shying at weeds and sniffing at pebbles. Suddenly, he froze. A mouse nibbled on seeds in the grass between the road and the cliff. The four saw it, just as Little Bear did. "No!" yelled Briar, lunging at their pet. The mouse bolted, the dog in hot pursuit. Yelling for him to stop, the four gave chase. Over the road, down the path, and into the cave. Little Bear kept going into the depths of the cliff. His yapping struck echoes from the stone. "I will skin that animal," Deja said, hunting for the lantern she had brought here weeks ago. She found it. "We need to catch him first," grumbled Brian. "Little Bear, get your behind back here." Fumbling with the flint and the steel kept beside the lamp, Deja struggled to produce a spark. Finally, the wick sputtered, then flamed. Tris noted Sandry was staring at the lamp. "Are you all right? We have to go find him." "I'm fine," replied Sandry, her voice harsh. They followed the pup deeper into the cliff where they'd never gone before. The light, reflected from polished brass behind the wick, ran across lumps and curves in the cave without touching a rear wall. They'd never realized it was so deep. "We're sure about the quake and the tidal wave?" whispered Tris. The others looked at her. "I don't feel well." "Nico was positive they wouldn't reach us," Briar insisted. "Stop worrying. Little Bear, come back here." Deja halted. Something in the wall caught her eye. A glinting layer in a bed of clay. "Sandry, take the lamp." "All right." Deja handed the lamp over. and picked at the shiny material with a fingernail. "Trade's wind's blessing," she remarked. "I wonder if Frostpine knows there's coal under the temple." Briar came over and laid his palms on the rock. Closing his eyes, he stroked it. "Rosethorn's right. It is made of really old plants," he said, awed. On they walked, losing sight of the cave's opening when the tunnel curved to the left and down. Deja kept one hand on the seam of coal. It broadened as they went deeper. "Why does the fire temple pay high prices for Summersea fuel when we could start our own mine right here? This whole place is like what's in my Shakan's pot," Briar explained. "Rosethorn said when they built the temple in a crater, they put in pipes and layers of gravel and things like magic boundaries, so we don't flood when it rains. I bet they're scared to move anything underneath, high prices or no." Little Bear galloped into their midst, tongue lolling, white showing all around his eyes. Sandry knelt to look at him, putting the lamp on the floor beside her. "Bear, what is it? What's wrong?" "He's shaking like a leaf," he told the others. "Is he?" Deja began to say and stopped. The warmth in the ground was burning through her shoes. Under her palm, the wall heated so quickly that she yelped and snatched her hand away. "Don't look now," said Triss weakly. "But I think the tide's coming in again." She stumbled and went to her knees. Little Bear howled, and the air wailed as he set up echoes from the stone. Briar gasped, pressing his hands over his ears. There was screaming in the ground, green voices shrilling their agony. The floor jumped, or rather it tossed them like toys on a sheet. A falling chunk of slate crushed the lamp. With a cry, Sandry collapsed on top of Little Bear. Deja leapt to help her. Staggering as the floor pitched, she fell over Sandry and the dog. The ceiling dropped, halting only inches from their heads. The ground rolled, heaved, and twisted for what seemed like forever. At last it slowed and stopped. For a moment there was nothing to hear but the grate of stone, Little Bear's whimper, and 4 throats that rasped with each breath. "It's dark." There was a shudder in Sandry's voice. "Don't leave me in the dark. Please, I'll be good." "Sati," Deja croaked, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Please don't talk like that." Something pressed her back. She was arched, palms and feet holding her off of the ground. Little Bear and Sandry were jammed under her belly, holding her up and drop shielding by her. The long shaft of Sandry's drop spindle was digging into her breastbone. "What has happened?" asked Deja. "What's on top of us?" Cloth rustled, gravel rolled. A questing hand almost hit Deja in the eye. "Sorry," Briar said. "Black as pitch." He groped the surface at Deja's back. The dark," whispered Sandry. "Not the dark." Triss felt the area around her. "I have 2 big rocks here," she said. "One's at an angle. It keeps anything else from dropping on me from overhead. For now, anyway." "Feels like the coal on top of you, Deja," said Briar. "I got dirt on one side of me and rock on another." A hand felt around Deja's wrist. "Just me," Triss said. "Little Bear, come here." The puppy yelped as she grabbed one of his legs and yanked. "Sorry," she muttered. Pulling gently, she dragged the dog down over her. "Sandry, come on," Briar said. "Don't go to bits. We gotta think of something fast. There's aftershocks, you know. At least get out from under Deja." "Where are you?" Sandry asked with a sniff. "I can't see any." She screamed when Briar touched her arm. The rasp of shifting dirt filled the air. "You got to calm down," he whispered. "We're in tight, and we need all our wits." "'Stead of the half one you got, thief boy," drawled Deja. To her surprise, Triss chuckled. Sandry gripped Briar's hands. As he pulled, she wriggled out from under the traitor. With a sigh, Deja began to kneel, and felt the coal at her back shift. Quickly, she pressed herself against it once more. A hand touched her rib cage. "What's the matter?" demanded Briar. "Why don't you sit?" "The ceiling moved when I tried to." Sandry began to sob. A small hand plastered itself over her mouth. "What is the matter with you?" Triss demanded softly, her own voice shaking. As panicked as she was, she couldn't stand to hear Sandry in terror. "You faced down Crane and bullies and a crowd of truly vexed merchants, so I know you're not a coward." "It's too hard to explain," whispered Sandry when Triss took her hand away. "This is stupid," Briar snapped. "We're supposed to have magic, and look at us. I don't know anything that can help us. What use is a mage if that happens?" Deja half remembered something. "Hush," she ordered. "I need to think." "We're in trouble," croaked Sandry and giggled. Little Bear licked her face. No one moved. All around them, sounds went through the ground. All around them, sounds went through the ground. Shifting earth, cracking stone. Briar listened hard for the rumble of an aftershock, though what he could do if one came was anybody's guess. "I don't see how even a strong girl like you can hold up rock," Triss said at last, wiping her face on her skirt. "Your magic might be helping." "Hold it. Remember what Nico said?" asked Briar. "Think of objects and the workings we know, and open up. Let what we know shape the magic if we don't have the right spells." "Wait a minute," replied Deja. "Let me see what I can find." Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and coughed. Briar slid under her, bracing her legs and belly with his own back. Deja was able to relax against him without the roof moving. "Thanks," she croaked when she could breathe again. Swallowing, she took a slow, deep breath, letting it out. She forced other thoughts from her mind. Never mind that she was hardly comfortable. Never mind her nose was filled with dust. Never mind the ache in her wrists and ankles. Breathe in, and in, and in. Safety, she thought, drifting in silence. I'd like to be safe, for a moment, for now. Protected. Shielded. As clearly as if she stood in her room, she could see the Siraku, her survival box. There was the mark of Third Ship Kasubo, stamped in its leather-covered sides. There were the straps that held it together. Inside lay the copper lining that kept its contents safe. Safe, she thought, and opened her magic. Make us safe. Power rolled away from her, growing to include the others, spreading around the hollow, taking the shape that meant safe to Deja Kasubo. That power told her what was around them. Layers of stone, coal, and metal ore, and the bright flecks that were starstone pieces. Her power flowed into those things, grain by grain, stone by stone, shaping itself into a box. It was solid, and yet it wasn't. A magical Siraku. Reaching its limit, 3 feet beyond them in every direction, her magic wriggled like a cat making a dent in a favorite pillow. It settled and firmed. The bond between Deja and the thing she had just made broke. They were separate, she and the living Siraku. I think we're all right for now, she whispered. I'm pretty sure I did something, but don't start asking what I did, merchant girl, because I can't explain. We're protected for now, I think. Triss reached with her own senses and found the magical barrier. Will it let me find an air vent? She asked, worried. Her throat felt dry and clogged. If we don't get air down here soon, we'll be in deep trouble. We are anyway, Briar pointed out. Deja remembered the way that the magic had passed through stone and metal. I think it will, she said. I'm pretty sure anyway. Try it. To her magic, silently, she added, Please? There was a crack between the stones in Triss's corner. Putting her hands flat on either side of it, she drew in a deep, deep breath and let it go. Outside the magical box that enclosed them, small land waves rippled. Not tremors, but the movement of badly stacked dirt and stones. They needed to move and resettle. Nothing was balanced in this ground. It could all shift at any moment. Triss shuddered as she explored. The land wave's power was different from the restlessness of the tide when she tried to halt it, but it was the same. She had to do something quick, before those waves built power to break through Deja's spell. Breathing in, she called them to a clogged break in the earth and shooed them gently ahead. The crack widened and the land waves rolled through, shifting dirt and stone either side. Sandry whimpered as their coal roof groaned. Deja, whispered Briar. That sounds creepy. Can your magic stop it? What I made is outside. What's on top of us. It can't hold the roof up. Let me have a look, offered the boy. They waited. When Triss inhaled again, Deja and Briar followed suit. Once they had the rhythm of inhale, hold, exhale, they reached into the coal, feeling a multitude of tiny layers pressed hard together. Deja felt its promise of fire to come. Briar felt the smug pleasure of ancient plants that had managed to change themselves into something different. What do you think, Deja? His inner voice sounded like pine needles in her mind. Push up with your magic. To Briar, she sounded like hot coals. I'll push up with mine. Together they breathed in, deep. Briar thought of a trowel, tamping down earth, thumped their roof briskly. Deja thought of a bellows, pulling it open all the way to get the most air inside. The coal crunched and shifted upward. Sandry cried out, but the others were too deep into their power to hear. Triss, sorting more earth waves to widen her airway, broke through the ground surface in 3 places. Water poured down one. Hurriedly, she closed it with a shock wave and stone. The 2 other openings were good. She felt air trickle into the space. Let's try moving me, Deja whispered to Briar. He slid out from under her, tucking himself between Sandry and Triss. Little Bear huddled in Sandry's lap. Very, very carefully, Deja let her knees bend. She knelt, listening. The slab of coal didn't move. With a relieved sigh, she rearranged herself until she sat on the ground, hugging her knees. It's holding, she whispered, and the protection outside is still there. For a long moment, none of them said a word. They listened, or prayed, or wept silently, not wanting the others to know. There was no trace of light in their refuge. Every sound was important, a promise that they might die yet, just as the feeling of someone else's side or foot or tail meant they were still alive. You know, Bag, I would have swore you didn't have a scared bone in your body, Briar croaked at last. Well, now you know, replied Sandry. I'm scared of the dark. Just now I couldn't argue, Briar told her. In spite of her fear, Sandry grinned. Is it because of you being in that cellar the first time you did magic? She nodded, then remembered that no one could see. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better, but... In spite of herself, she sniffed, lips trembling. This is even worse than it was there. I had a little more room, for one thing. But they found you, Briar pointed out. You were all right then." "No," whispered Sandry. "They had to blindfold me. The light hurt so much